Hey guys, I have a great treat for you today. His name is Peter Evans, okay? He's the producer of the most incredible recent movie that I've just watched on Netflix called The Magic Pill. Incredible. You guys, if you haven't seen this, you need to check it out. It's a documentary on keto. There you go. Keto and paleo. And I think there's four or five main characters with different problems. Was it four or five? Was it four or five different?
Wow. To be honest with you, it's probably 5 or 6 or even 7 that we cover, because obviously we go up to Arnhem Land, which is in Northern Territory, and work with the Indigenous up there. And I think there was about 11 or 14 of them there as well, which was part of the package of the Magic Pill as well. So, and then we had children in Hawaii at the Shriners Center for Autism. We also had Abigail. We had, even Abigail, her family, you could look at that changing their whole life. So there was 3 or 4 of them in that, plus the lady Debbie. Plus there was also another lady that was that had diabetes, and then there was Michelle that had she had asthma and a whole lot of other medications that she was on and problems. Then we also had a look at the environmental issues and sustainability and a whole raft. So it's interesting. And also Professor Tim Noakes and his trial. So there's a little bit of everything in the film, which is what we tried to cover in 90 minutes. Trust me, we had so much more, and we had to cut so much out.
I could imagine what a project that is to put off, but I just wanted to let people know, I've watched a lot of documentaries. This one right here is high quality, borders on like literally magic. I mean, it's just amazing of the results, because you basically did it kind of a before and after. I mean, there was a small child who would only eat chicken fingers and those little goldfish things and apple juice. And then you just changed the diet. She went through a little transition and she was calm. She didn't have ADD. I mean, anyone watching that is just going to be literally blown away. What kind of reaction did you get from this movie?
The overwhelming reaction to it so far, it's been a word of mouth, obviously, and I guess it's spreading virally, which is wonderful. And we initially released it in certain cinemas, and it was basically like not a crowdfunding movement, but it was a community-based platform for cinematic release in Australia and New Zealand through a wonderful company called FanForce. And from that, then I managed to get a distributor called Gravitas, which distributes a lot of independent films. And this is my first film, so it was a challenge, trust me, from being a chef and I guess somebody that likes to create and conceptualize ideas and go, we really should share something like this with the world, but how do we do it? I don't know, but let's go. So it was a real learning curve for me. So from Gravitas, we got it onto iTunes and Amazon and Vimeo around the world. And from that, because it did so well on those platforms, Netflix took a look at it and they said, we would like to show it. And initially they took it for a year, and it's only been out, I think, now for 5 or 6 weeks on Netflix. But I just spoke with them yesterday, and they've agreed to extend the contract to 2 years now because it's doing so well across their territories. And their initial territories are Australia, New Zealand, United Kingdom, USA, and Canada. And from that, what they said yesterday is they're going to translate it into all the different languages and put it through all the territories, because it's such a powerful. So going back to what was the response, overwhelming, it brought tears to people's eyes through the emotional stories. And I think the tears come from a realization that people are like, wow, what we're promoting here and what you promote, Doctor, and the other experts in the film, and is a pretty simple approach that can have profound and long-lasting conclusions and results for people, and not only for individual health, but for planetary health and the environment. And that's what we tried to do with this film without pissing anyone off, without attacking the medical association, without attacking dietitians, without attacking vegans or vegetarians or whatever ideologies people have and beliefs have, because that's not how I operate.
Yeah.
It's about, let's just show the power of some really beautiful food in its essence, as we extracted from the people that run the Indigenous program. It's basically eating vegetables and some well-sourced seafood and meat. It's as simple as that. And from that, obviously, there's bio-individuality. But if we can remove the most inflammatory foods from our diet and just get back to working with nature holistically, then the results can be profound. And I do just want to mention something, because it's something that I say at the start of the film, is that food is very powerful, and these are anecdotal stories. But I've shared thousands upon thousands upon thousands of anecdotal stories from people from all ages, from all parts of the world, from all walks of life, that improve the quality of their life through the simple fact of changing their food. But as I say, as our disclaimer says, food is vitally important, as we know, but also we have to look at the other pillars of good health, which is sleep. We have to look at the beverages that we consume. We have to look at our relationship with the environment. Are we getting enough vitamin D? Do we respect the sun? Do we move our bodies functionally? Are we breathing? Are we connecting with ourselves emotionally? Do we love ourselves? Do we connect with our environment and our community? Do we love other people, or are we judgmental on others and ourselves? So emotional well-being and that mindfulness is something that generally has a flow-on effect from people changing their diet, because all of a sudden they start to feel better and they feel like they've got a little bit more energy. So it's like, well, what else can we look at that may be out of balance? So, I mean, I wear a shirt that says food is medicine, and I firmly believe that. But I also believe that we have to look at those other pillars, because they're equally as important. But generally, food is the easiest one for us to change on the spot.
Right. Right. And also when you change your diet, your overall emotion mood goes up, because you're out of the blood sugar up and down problems, and your brain is happier because it's being fed a better fuel source, and you're getting better memory, focus, and attention, which basically brings people up the emotional scale. So would you, I think I hear what you're saying. It's you're probably not necessarily defining it as a specific, this is keto or paleo, but you're just eliminating, you're just bringing in the basics of getting rid of the processed food, taking care of food, like here, vegetables, okay, guys, and then meat, all right, and then that's it. Keep it really simple.
Yeah, I follow a paleo approach, which in my definition is just an anti-inflammatory diet, which basically boils down to a beautiful plate of organic, colorful vegetables, whatever's in season, and add to that a side of well-sourced seafood or meat that's got good fat. And obviously includes some bone broths, which I had with my daughter this morning. We had some fish bone broth before we went to school, before I took her to school. So we have some bone broth during the week. And we also eat some fermented or probiotic foods, such as sauerkraut or kimchi or kvass or kefir. I don't do dairy because it doesn't work well with me. And also certain aspects of that industry don't align with my own belief systems and for the environment. But I tend to not try to use labels. I mean, the only label that I think we should be using for ourselves is that we're humans. And what is the best approach to fueling this body physically and emotionally and spiritually from a human perspective, and what has supported us over our evolutionary journey. And I guess that's why paleo seems to tick the boxes, or even an autoimmune paleo approach that's low carb with healthy fats. And the reason that ketogenic popped up so much in the film is the work with the children with autism. It also is basically, I did a book last year with Dr. McCullough. We did a book called The Fat for Fuel Ketogenic Cookbook, and I've released low carb cookbooks in Australia as well. And that's the Fat for Fuel Cookbook with Dr. McCullough, who's a dear old friend. And ketogenic is something that obviously a mild state of ketosis is a wonderful state to be in, and cycling in and out of that, as Dr. McCullough says, and also David Perlmutter, who feature in the film, is a wonderful state to be in, because then you can regulate your blood sugars, and you don't have those crashes and things like that. But again, I try not to get caught up with the labels.
Right.
I've never counted a carb in my life. I've never used ketone supplements as such. I just cook delicious food
Right.
to that formula, vegetables with a beautiful side of meat or veg. I mean, meat or egg. And I fast intermittently. So generally I eat 1 to 2 meals a day, or I fast for a whole day, and I don't crave food. So and the other thing is I'm not really obsessed about food. I love cooking because I've been a chef for 30 years now, and I've cooked over 1 million meals with hands. But I see food as a celebration, and it's something I look forward to, but I'm not fanatic about. And I think that's also what we try to show with the film.
Well, it's funny that you brought that up, because I think that's a good point. When you're in this blood sugar roller coaster, it's almost like you get into this, I have to eat every hour and a half. It becomes kind of like you have a lot of addictions and hormonal imbalances, to the point where it's a bit aberrated, or there's a lot of insanities. But when you go into this ketosis mode where you're not craving, you're not hungry, it just kind of this need for food, you eat it because it's more enjoyable, versus kind of like, I'm craving, I'm gonna have this addiction. It's really it's a different thing. So that's a really good, interesting distinction, because I think that until you said that, doing this gets rid of a lot of weirdness on food, because I think probably your dopamine receptors improve, your serotonin receptors improve, and then you just basically eat because it tastes good, but you get out of this addiction thing, but you don't know it until you do it. And then you're like, wow, this is dramatic. Yeah. And then
Well, I think it creates a healthy relationship with food.
Yeah.
And it's funny because some of the mainstream media sees following a ketogenic or paleo or these, I guess what they would call fad diets, which I would call completely natural eating, can cause psychological problems around food, where it's, as you just said, it's actually the reverse. It actually takes away the dependence or that craving or that unnatural association that people have with food by having a standard American or Australian diet. And as you said, it's until you experience it, then it's hard to describe, because people think you're crazy. But
Right.
I do honestly believe it creates a healthier relationship between ourselves and the food that we eat, so that we're not craving, we're not obsessed, we're not thinking about it constantly. It just becomes a part of our life, like going to the bathroom, like going to sleep of a night time. It just becomes this natural thing that when we are in harmony with it, then it's the most beautiful thing, and it's something to celebrate. And I mean, my daughter last night and I had I went to the butcher. I got this beautiful eye fillet, and eye fillet for me is probably the most boring cut of meat in the world, but it's I wanted to do a dish with her because I didn't have a lot of time, and I knew I could cook it in 10 minutes. So I got this beautiful grass-fed piece of beef, and it was maybe 7 or 8 ounces, and we shared that between the two of us, and had some sweet potato. We also had some spinach from my mum's garden and some chimichurri on the side and some sauerkraut. And from start to finish, we had it on the table in 10 to 15 minutes. And we both just sat there and ate it. And she goes, "Geez, this is yum, Dad." I'm like, yeah, that's what this is. It's just meant to be delicious, nourishing, and we finish that and get on with our day, or get on with the night.
I love it. Hey, if you guys have not seen The Magic Pill, I just wanted to give you a little brief thing out there. You go through, like you said, I think maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 different characters that, I mean, you have a child who has ADD, you have one lady that has cancer, there was one lady I think had blood sugar problems or maybe even diabetes or on medication, and you basically film these people over, I think maybe, I don't know if it was a 6-week or a 2-week, and literally it's like you're sitting on a stack of dynamite, the power of changing just that diet. I mean, and the Aborigine group that they're gaining weight, developing diabetes, they're on medication, and then all of a sudden you see this transformation, people coming off. It's so obvious. Of course, you know, you're going to get the small percentage of naysayers, like the Australian Medical Association, but you could pretty much ignore those guys because they have to defend that. But I could imagine, I mean, like I watched it. I could, I started watching it first. I'm like, a lot of these things, like I'll turn off within the first minute. It pulled me right in. So you really did a fantastic job of the stories, and then the transformations were just mind blowing, especially of the child. And then, I mean, can you tell me what was it like, even for you filming this? Were you did you have any doubt like it was going to work? Did you go, gosh, what if this doesn't work? It's going to be a disaster. But
well, it's a question. I really like that question. Did I have any doubt that it wouldn't work? No, I didn't have any doubt that it wouldn't work, because for the last 7 years, we've been promoting this way of life, and I've got a 10-week online program that I just released for free as of this week. But prior to that, we've had 50,000 people do it throughout the globe. And not one person has said that they haven't improved their life from doing that. And you would think that in this day and age of social media and people voicing their opinion, that there would have been somebody that would have said, hey, Pete, I actually didn't get better or improve my life from doing your program. So no, I didn't have any doubt that it wouldn't work. But here's the interesting thing, and this is what I love about human nature and society that we live in. Quite a few people have said, oh, I would love to see a follow-up on these people in a year's time or 5 years' time. And my response is, why? Why do you need these people to continue to do what has helped them? Because no one is forcing any of these people to adopt this way of life. So you should never base your judgments or opinions or beliefs on something that somebody else does or doesn't do. So, and that's what I always say to people that want to adopt this way of life, which is just celebrating beautiful food, in my opinion, and self-love, is number one, always speak with your health professional. If it's a functional medical doctor or an integrative doctor or somebody that actually knows what they're talking about and is getting the results with their patients, sustainable long-term, then great. But speak to them first, because if you're on medications or you might have contraindications that might not allow you to do this 100%, whatever they may be, go about it very, very intelligently. Number two is come at it at your own pace. Some people like to do like I did, just go cold turkey. Once I read Nori Gagaudis's book, Primal Body, Primal Mind, it resonated with me. I said, this sounds like common sense. I'm going to do it all up. And within 4 to 6 weeks, my whole life changed. But then I waited for a year before I actually told anyone about it, because I wanted just to see how it worked for me. 25 years ago, I became a vegan, and I did that for 3 or 4 years, and I felt great for the first 3 to 6 months. And then it was a slippery slope down the hill. But I held on to my beliefs. This works. This has got to work. This has got to be good for the planet. This has got to be good for me. It's got to be good for the animals. Until I had the realization that I'm getting really sick from following this approach, and it's my belief that this is good for me that is causing me harm. So let's say I was very cautious with the paleo approach before I went out and spoke to people about it. But I witnessed it on myself. I witnessed it on my family. I witnessed it on a larger scale. And then I thought, okay, let's actually start to bring in some scientific information about why this can have the benefits that I'm experiencing and other people are experiencing. And I've been doing it now for 7 years. And the total opposite happened with me from how I went with being vegan or vegetarian, was that I actually felt crap for the first couple of weeks through the detox period and the adjunct. But then since then, I feel stronger at the age of 45 now than I ever have. So every year I feel smarter, I feel clearer in the head, I feel more energetic. And I don't actually do that much. I'm not a fanatic about exercise or anything like this. So going back to the question is, I never doubted it, because over the last 7 years, I've shared thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands of stories. Never once have I had somebody that said this hasn't worked for them or improved their life. The only thing I wouldn't even say I was worried about is, will these people stick to it while we film them? Because obviously it costs money, it takes time, and you can never, unless someone signs a contract and you live with them 24 hours a day, how do you know that they're going to stick with the principles? You just don't. It's free will. It's human nature to do whatever humans feel like they want to do. So, but luckily enough, the people that we followed, whether they did break out of that or not follow it 100%, it doesn't really matter, because the benefit from even following it 70%, 80%, 90% are profound, are so profound. And so for the people that say, I'd love a follow-up for a year or two, not a problem, but I have no guarantees that these people are going to continue this way of life. I know Abigail, the girl with autism, and her father, Barry's just started his own blog, and it has changed his whole family's world. And I shared their blog on my Facebook page the other day. The lady that had the type 2 diabetes, she's gone on and she has changed her whole life. I think one of the other ladies has gone back into how she used to eat. But again, that comes down to what people's priorities are of their life, what they're going through at that particular time. Is food a priority? Have they got other emotional issues that they need to deal with? And my next film that I'm going to attempt to bring to the surface and share with people will cover that next, I guess, the next idea about what it means to actually self-love yourself, release negative emotional blockages and patterns. To be honest with you, this side of the work that I do, I'm more passionate about this than I am about actually the food side of things. So I've been studying this and how our brains think and how our emotions work and how our belief systems are formed and how our identity or ego is formed, and why we have such disconnect from our own being and from unconditional love, trust, and acceptance, that I'm going to attempt to bring that to light in the next journey that I do in this film making world. So I have no idea when that's going to come out. I've got the concept behind it and the outline, and now I've got to, hopefully we'll follow the same steps, and we'll take people that are looking for a change emotionally and physically and in their own being. So it'll be fun. So no, I never had a doubt that improvements wouldn't happen. But again, as I said at the start, food is just one of the legs to this table that we call humanity or being human. And if we can strengthen the food leg and make that strong, then hopefully we can go around and tighten and strengthen the legs, so we've got a beautiful, stable foundation.
That's great. Yeah, I do a show on Friday morning, and we get about 2,100 callers in the first hour. So we have people all over the world that call in. 99% of all the questions are keto or intermittent fasting. And I mean, a lot of the questions are just not even questions, just they want to tell me their success. So this is almost like an amazing phenomena that are occurring. And I think that probably the common denominator that I think that's really powerful is just the reduction of high insulin and what that does to your physiology, what it does to your emotions, what it does to your heart, your kidneys, your nerves. And I mean, like, insulin's been around for billions of years in like snails and fish and clams. They used to use it to subdue their prey so they can eat them. And then in the 1900s, the psychiatrist came out with something called insulin shock therapy, put someone in a coma as a therapy. I mean, and then they wake up fat, like after injection of 50 different times. So I think now it's like an experiment of, not an experiment, but it's like the common denominator is high insulin. And so it's putting people into states of basically losing their memory, losing dementia, and their mood is. And I think, so many people come to me, what do I do for this? What do I do for that? I'm like, well, do you have the basic things in? Do you have your eating in? No. Okay, well, do that and then come back and talk to me later, because your inflammatory conditions, your arthritis is just a symptom probably of some of these basics. So for me, it's all about getting people to do it themselves, learn the basics, so they're not dependent on me or a pill, as far as the medical drug and things like that. And so, because so many people, it's like a unnecessary, huge industry of just treating these symptoms, never getting better, and ending up with more problems, more symptoms, when again, these simple things, getting rid of things that stimulate insulin, will just create a nice foundation so you can actually create health, which is kind of missing in America. There's really no health in the healthcare in America. I don't know what it's like in Australia, but it's probably similar.
Well, it's interesting you brought up that just this week we've had the head of the Australian Medical Association call for Netflix to remove the film, The Magic Pill. And I don't think they've actually seen it. And then throughout the media, people are having their opinions as well, whether they're journalists or panelists on talk shows. And again, I don't think they've actually seen the film, which is a little bit disappointing, because if you're going to comment on something, at least put in the work and either read the book or watch a movie, or understand the topic that you're talking about, so that you don't come across as being naive or ignorant about the topic. So we have, throughout the film, we have great doctors and experts. And for instance, Dr. Angad Chatterjee, who hosts BBC's Doctor in the House, he features in our film. We have Dr. Jason Fung, who's a kidney specialist, who is an expert on fasting and intermittent fasting, and also insulin. And that's where the name of the film came about. I originally was going to call it Food as Medicine, but someone already had that name for a documentary, which was a bit sad. But it was okay, because as I was watching the rough cuts of what we filmed, and I interviewed Dr. Jason Fung for the film, was that he said people are looking for the magic pill, and there is no such magic pill. And I just thought, that's a brilliant name for the film. And then I spoke to my art designers. I said, I want to get the idea of a pill, but once it's open, what we see in there is all that beautiful produce that can help sustain life. So that's why on the artwork we've got vegetables and fruit and meat and seafood popping out. And I thank Jason Fung for that line, because it really struck a chord with me, that people are looking for that magic pill. And I think the medical associations are putting everything into those magic pills. And I do want to say, I've got some amazing friends that are doctors that, so I, as I say in the film, I believe modern medicine and ancient wisdom need to work harmoniously hand in hand, because, it's crazy. You wouldn't, if you got hit by a car, you wouldn't, there's amazing trauma relief surgeons and other specialists that are so good at what they do. But again, it's that holistic view. And that's why I see these integrative doctors teaming themselves with the latest scientific evidence, plus also the ancient wisdom of what food can do, and working with naturopaths and other experts in their field. And they're coming together to create this wonderful healing center or platforms or information like you're doing here, Doctor, as well, and sharing that information. And going back to what you said about insulin, is that we also feature Dr. Andreas Enfeldt, who is the diet doctor, who's a beautiful human being out of Sweden. And he sums it up, and I mean, it's a controversial statement. And also Timothy Noakes sums it up as well in the film, but they believe that most metabolic illness can be traced back to that overconsumption or of carbohydrates or insulin resistance, and then from that, these diseases start to manifest themselves. And it's such a simple approach that is, if you can combine that with modern medicine, I think then we're going to have a very different future for our health, for the health of our nations, because we need some help, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think you're right. And of course, it goes up against certain established fixed ideas, and that's going to be a while. But I think I'm so glad that you spent the time and energy to create something like this, because I think it's going to give a lot of people hope. It's going to get them to look at another way of eating. And I already know from working with tens of thousands of people that it works. It's just a matter of introducing someone to it. It might be a new concept, getting them to try it, and then do it for yourself, right? Because I actually, in my 20s, I'm 53 right now, but when I was in my 20s, I did the vegan thing for about 8 years. Honestly, it was the sickest time of my life. I started getting into the carrot juices, and I literally turned orange, and I started having blood sugar problems. And then one day I said, you know what? I told my wife, I said, I gotta figure this out. I'm 28. I have arthritis and I have all these issues, chronic fatigue. So I stumbled on some blood sugar stuff, started changing things, added some protein in the morning and the whole thing, and flipped everything overnight. So I was going to ask you, how did you initially even get into this? Did you have a physical problem, or did you just because usually people get into this because they had a problem themselves. How did you get introduced to this whole concept?
Sure. I'll get into that, but I just want to take one step back, because in the film we feature a lady that has cancer, and she talks about her ketogenic journey. And then we feature Dr. Eugene Fine, who is always the definitions of what people do always escape me for some reason. I probably don't pay too much attention, but I believe he's a cellular biologist down at in Brooklyn. And what he says is, and he's been doing studies on ketogenic and cancer cells. And what he says is something that we need to take into consideration, is that potentially down the track, diet may be used as an adjunct to traditional cancer therapies. So in nowhere in the film do we say, don't work with your professional doctor about the normal treatment of cancer, because that's, irresponsible on our behalf. So when he says possibly ketogenic will be used as adjunct, or dietary principles should be used as an adjunct in the future, all he's saying is, let's look at diet as something to add to one of the tools that we use to deal with cancer. So I just wanted to make that very clear, because even the media in Australia is saying that this film promotes cancer answers for cancer. And it's like, right. No, again, and that's why I'm like, have you seen the film? Because that's not actually what we say. So I just wanted to clear that up, because it's something that, we've never said, and anyone that can look at the word adjunct or adjunct into the dictionary will understand what that means. Right. So, but getting into our own story, again, I actually read a book by Anthony Robbins when I was 19 called Unlimited Power. And it was the first book that I'd ever read about the potential of the human being, so to speak, and the potential of our brains, how we can use our emotions, how we can use our intention to set goals and to attract different things into our lives, and how to fuel our bodies. And at the time, he was promoting a vegetarian approach, which is hence why I adopted a vegetarian approach and / vegan approach. But what I learned from that was very powerful. The whole experience was powerful, because what that one book opened up for me was a world of seeking knowledge. And from Anthony Robbins' book, I was introduced to Deepak Chopra's work. I was introduced to Paulo Coelho's work. These wonderful thought leaders and philosophers on the human potential. And from that, I had a voracious appetite about what is possible for us. And prior to that, for the first 19 years of my life, I had no idea that there were even people that contemplated and wrote about this sort of stuff, because it wasn't in my world. And maybe I was just enjoying being a kid. But once I tapped into that, it ignited something in me that has been burning ever since. It's an understanding for what it means to be a human and understanding our potential. And I think one of humanity's great issues is people can often be scared of their own potential. So they sabotage themselves, whether it be through relationships or diet or self-dialogue or this, that, and the other. So I guess the turning point was that initial book, and it took me, if we talk about diet-wise, it took me nearly 20 years from that point, or 18 years, to actually discover Nora Gagaudis's work and the work by people like David Perlmutter or Dr. Dale Bredesen and the like, to understand that there's a very simple approach to food. And being a father has been, you don't take that lightly. Once you're responsible for other human beings instead of just yourself, then things start to adapt and things start to change. Well, hopefully they will, and they did for me. And I realized that I'm responsible for these children for a period of their life where I have to nourish them and keep them functioning healthy. And this just made a hell of a lot of sense. So, and my oldest daughter, was born with a teratoma, which is it's a benign form of tumor that. So she had an operation when she was 2 weeks old, and had it removed. But because of that process, she had antibiotics, obviously, because a 2-week-old baby, she got 7 stitches where it was removed and she had to go under. So you know what happens with antibiotics with children that are so young. It can hurt their gut microbiomes. So she's been on the back foot ever since that. And so it's been a search for how do we get her to a state of better health so she's more resilient and she can go through her day-to-day life without going backwards, as we can see some children experience through overuse of antibiotics in certain situations and not having their gut healthy. So it was a multifactorial approach as to why that I'm passionate about this. And my wife, Nicola, it was actually, she was reading Nora Gagaudis's book, and she said, "You might like to read this." And as soon as I read it, I was like, fantastic. And I read the book, and then I emailed Nora. I said, I just wanted to know more and more and more. And we've become lifelong friends now. And she's still a mentor to me. And that's it. And I've been fortunate enough through my own personal journey in Australia and the United States that I get to cook on television or judge cooking competitions. So I have this unique platform where I can reach quite a few people through social media these days. And I don't take that lightly. I take it with the utmost responsibility. So sharing recipes is something that I love to do. Sharing tips in the kitchen for people to create delicious food for their family is something that I love to do. Sharing information from people that are getting results like yourself when it comes to health and nutrition is something that I love to do. And writing cookbooks is just an absolute joy. And I've released 20 now, 10 prior the paleo, I guess, crossover, which were all delicious cookbooks too. And a lot of the recipes feature the stuff that we're talking about now, and 10 subsequently. And I've got another 4 that I've just written for the next couple of years, because I love sharing these recipes, because the thing that's actually going to change people's perception and make them want to do this permanently, I believe, is when I alluded to before, or spoke about the story of cooking the steak with vegetables for my daughter last night. When your children or your friends or loved ones will say to you, "Wow, that is just so delicious and so yummy. Thank you for sharing that gift." You know, that is, all we have to do is look back into our evolutionary history and understand that it is a gift to be able to share food with people that we love and care for. And if we can make it taste good, then there's a great opportunity here for people to continue to eat this type of food. And if we can share recipes that are budget friendly, that are quick, that are accessible at the local supermarket or Whole Foods or farmers markets, or grow something in your backyard, then this is when I believe the movement will take place. When people really want to cook for themselves delicious food and not be scared about jumping into the kitchen, then I think that's when true change is going to happen. And
Yeah.
I guess I'm in a wonderful position to be able to use my skill, which is communication and cooking and connection. I like to join the dots. I like to connect people like yourself and other experts and bring them into my podcast like you're doing here and sharing that information. And it's free. It's just sharing of information. And for you and I, it's an hour out of our time, but it's an investment as well into our own self, and it's an investment into the community. It's an investment into the planet that we inhabit. And the more and more people that start to think about where their food comes from and how it reacts to them, and how do we connect to our fellow individuals on this planet, whether it's human beings or plant life or the animal kingdom, then there will be long and lasting changes that can happen.
Love it. That's a great point. And I do want to piggyback on what you said about, I fractured my elbow, my shoulder. The doctors that worked on me were basically artists and engineers. I mean, they saved my life. My son, when he was 6 months old, developed infantile botulism. And I mean, here I'm into alternative health, and I see my child, 6 months, starts coughing, moaning, and I'm trying all these natural remedies, and I'm like, I'm not going to go to the medical profession. And I'm like, you know what? I go to the health food store, I'm looking around, and it just hits me. I'm like, no, I'm taking him, see what's going on. We took him to the emergency room. Next thing you know, they hooked him up with little tubes. They did a lumbar puncture, collapsed his lungs, the whole thing, put him on a respirator. I mean, that was like the most stressful time of my life. But without the medical team, emergency team there to save him, and then they basically flew a doctor in from San Francisco who was doing some research on infantile botulism. Only 20 kids get it a year, and just happened to have some bit of a natural antibody from horses or something, this antibody that was involved in a test. And I'm like, yes, let's do that. And quickly he pulled right out of it. And, to have your child go through that, and, my wife at the hospital, that was like, talk about adrenal stress, but he pulled out. So I really appreciated the whole medical help with that. So we need medicine. We just don't need the excessive things that are harmful and the side effects. We need an open mind of you in bringing food into this thing. And unfortunately, some of the doctors have closed minds and fixed ideas, but I think it's changing. And I think we just need to get more awareness. And my goal, I train doctors. I train 2,500 doctors in alternative care. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start going after more of the ground level, the consumer and the person out on the street, and actually give them the data, because it's easier to receive that because they don't have the fixed ideas. Trying to train some of the doctors is like, they're just not as open. They're not receiving. Some are. So if enough people are demanding this, then they will change. But I just wanted to interview you, and I wanted to say I really appreciated what you did with the film. And the last question I had is, what kind of new projects do you have coming down the pipe?
Oh, wow. Where do I start? So I film a few different TV series. I'm a judge on a reality cooking show in Australia and New Zealand called My Kitchen Rules. I've just in the United States called A Movable Feast, which is on PBS, where I cook paleo food, if you like, just meat and veg. vegetables, seafood, vegetables, things like this. But I also get to work with America's top chefs. I was just in New York last week, actually, filming with John George, I should say, and these beautiful chefs from around America, and it's always a delight. So if you want to see me cooking on television, jump onto PBS. It airs in September onwards, and I've been doing that for 6 years, and I love it because I get to meet some amazing chefs and amazing producers. And it's interesting because so many of the chefs that I've worked with in the States are now coming to me. I get emails and going, I watched your film. What's the next step? And it's wonderful because chefs generally don't look after their health that well. But what else is coming up? As I said, the next documentary about being human is going to start, and I've got a few more books coming out. I've got actually a celebration of vegetables is my next one. Then I've got meat and 3 vegetables after that one. You know, just having a bit of fun with that whole topic of, we used to eat meat and 3 vegetables, and people sort of have turned their noses up at it, that it was too basic. But actually, we basically had it right back then. You know, maybe the vegetables weren't the best vegetables, like the potatoes, on every meal. So we'll give that a little bit more color. But that's one of my ideas. Possibly a health studio I'm going to be opening up in the coming months in Australia, and hopefully we can roll that out. And working with different restaurants and hotels and wellness centers on their menus. I like consulting on things like that, and delivering great food through these avenues. And of course, our 10-week program, as I mentioned, is completely free. It's called thepaleoway.com. If anyone's interested, there's a wealth of information. There's hundreds of recipes that people can access, and there's experts from all around the world that share their information. If anyone's interested. And I hope you like The Magic Pill on Netflix. You can get it at Amazon as well if you want a hard copy in Blu-ray or DVD. I mean, the goal would be to get that into hospitals, into schools, into aged care centers, and get people watching it that can actually help change the system. That's the goal. And that was my gift to the world, is to put that film out, and hopefully we'll see what changes happen. But Eric, thank you for having me so much.
Oh, my pleasure. And I'm going to put a link down below so you guys can go check this out. Netflix, watch The Magic Pill. And then tell your friends and family to watch it. It's very valuable. It's one of the best films out there on the right way to eat, and just amazing transformations. And thanks so much, Peter, for doing this interview. I really appreciate it. I think it's early morning over there, right? It's late over here, so we hit the different time zone here. Yeah.
Thank you so much, brother. We love you, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with your listeners and viewers. So cheers, brother.
My pleasure.